My name is Byron Best, and I'd like to welcome you to this session of Van's Visual Suite, focus on forms design. Now, first, before I begin, I want to give you a little background on exactly what forms design was intended to do, how all of this relates. So I've logged in now while talking with you here, and I'm going to look at the forms design application, and forms and screen design. That's what we'll be focused on today. And to illustrate where this information is coming from and how it's used, I want to go to the order entry system and just pull up an order and start there. So I'll pull up the very first order that I can find here to differ. For those of you who have worked with the VanSvs software for a number of years, you know that order entry contains a lot of information, but many times it does not contain all of the information you want it to. Consequently, you really need some either changes to the software made, or you need to customize what you have to meet your specific needs outside of the package release of the software. So, for instance, in order entry, the standard screens that you have or tabs are the main tab, the billing tab, miscellaneous tab, agent, painters, extra pickups and deliveries, and dispatch. All of those are standard screens, standard fields, nothing special or unique to you as an individual company. However, the forms design product, or the screen design more specifically, can design custom screens to contain additional information that you did not have a place for in other tabs across your screen here. So as an example, I might say, well, you know what? I really need a materials screen that allows me to go in and put in my household good materials beyond just the standard materials, including declared value, what the premium is going to be, if it's depreciated valuation or what it might be. I might have commercial supplies. I want a lot of additional fields for special instructions. So these are custom screens designed in a format that you want that might more closely parallel documents that you prepare, etc. Maybe that you do a lot of trade show work and you want a screen that allows you to keep track of a lot of trade show details. There's custom information specific to the order that you're in, but still it allows you to gather that information. Another example that's used quite frequently is for storage information. And in this case, I've got a tab for general information, tab specific to SIT information, where I can keep track of the date in, the date out, the net weight, where it's stored. Even if it's not stored in my location, I can keep track of SIT shipments that perhaps I need to keep a thumb on, as well as the SIT expiration date, so I can keep track of, what do I have that hasn't gone out, but still in SIT that I need to take a look at. Another example might be for your military information, where when you're printing your forms, you've got to have things like GBL, Social Security, rank and grade, code of service, etc. And those are all unique to you as you're handling military shipments. So at that point, you have designed a screen to contain the information. Then you're ready to start putting the information down on paper. It's the form design side of the house. So I'm going to start is actually with the forms design instead. So let's closing out the order entry screen. I'm going to go into form design. Now, before I get into a menu selection item, I am going to minimize the screen here, and I have two items that I want to show you talk about. Taking a military form here first and looking at it. So I took a photograph of a military form. I'm going to expand it here so you can see it a little more closely. And you can see that what I've done, I have placed a ruler, and this is specifically, I think, many times called a printer's ruler, because it allows a printer to measure a form and determine the placement of information on that form. As you can see, based on the illustration here, I have a form that has the detachable pins at the top with perforated values here. You'll notice that I've taken my ruler and I've said, let me see if I were to print one line here, mark, where's my placement of the first line of print? So you can barely see this, but right here, there is a 1. Let's see if I can open that up a little bit more. The red arrow, you can see that I have placed the line right on the perforation. And you can see that if I were printing something on this form, this would be line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, etc. And as I look down further on the form, it's very big. Okay, there we go. If I were wanting to print the name of the shipper, over here to the left, I probably print it on line 14 of this document. So if I were setting up from the beginning, the first thing that I would do is measure my vertical lines and make a note off to the left-hand side what number that print is going to be. You can really see that I've got a 4 there. I've written the number 14 beside it, number 12 beside the government bill of lading or GBL number. And so the first things I always do is I look at the form and I say, what fields do I know already exist in order entry, and what fields do I need to create a screen to contain so that I have all of the data that I want for the form. So if you jot down that you know that the name is going to be printed on line 14, a little bit further on this form, shipment reference number, I'm going to print on line 27. Just lines right now, because so many of the rest of these fields exist in order entry until there's been a screen designed to contain them. I think I might make a note of. On line 18, I'm going to say origin. Down as well. That's the vertical measurement, top to bottom. Now I'm going to open up a screen that takes that same ruler, put it to the side of the page just a little differently. Form. You'll notice that I've lined up the left-hand side right here with the left-hand side of the paper. And over here with my red arrow, I have indicated that field number 10, if you notice these are listed 1 through 10, 20, 30, etc. I'm going to want to start printing horizontally in the 9th position over, or 9th keystroke, if you were typing it, beginning in field number 9. This particular ruler measures, assuming that you're going to be using a font or a typeface that is 10 characters per linear inch. So I get over here to the 10th character, there's 1 inch from the edge of the paper over to where that character prints. If for some reason you're wanting to compress this into smaller fonts, you obviously can get more characters printed in a smaller space, but you also have to use a different ruler or do a different calculation in order to find those values. So here you can see that I'm going to start printing my government bill of lading, my name of my owner. All of that information that lines up in this left-hand box, I'm going to print on the 9th call as I start to print. Going back to my VS, I want to go into Forms Design and want to create a form. So I already do have a form in here. I have a form for the DD619, which is indeed the form that you are looking at. But the DD619, I would be able to see the various pieces of information that are printing on the form. But you'll notice that because I'm not looking at a specific order, it's just showing the X's for anything that's alphabetic. It's showing dates for anything that's a date, and it would show 9s for anything that is numeric nature, such as a weight or something like that. But rather than work with a form that's already here, I need to take just those 2 or 3 measurements that I showed you in the pictures and start with a new form. So I'm going to say I want a new form. This is going to be form, and I'm just going to use 999. And I'm going to call this a sample form. We set my rows on 8.5 by 11 page at 66 rows. We set my columns at 80. And I don't want this to always print or always show to print every order I handle, so I'm not going to set the print flag. I'm also not going to set up a default printer for this because I may want it to go to a different printer at different times. Save that form. So now if I were to do a lookup, you said I have a form 99. All I have really set up at this point is what's called a header. It's just this little bit of information right here that kind of gives me the outside parameters of what the form is going to be. Inside, then, you see where you're going to set up the detail that's going to print on the form. I'll discuss these fields as I go through them. I'm going to create a new piece of detail. Notice that it defaults to row 1, column 1. Remember that I said, based on the measurements, that on the shipper, I wanted in row 14, I wanted to print the shipper's name. In column 9, we were going to put all of the left-hand most print jobs. Passes. Insert a form into a dot matrix printer. In theory, you could insert that form that you're cutting the bill lading or the paperwork, and you could say, you know what, the first pass, the first time anything prints on this, I want it to print just the header information. And then in the second pass, I may want it to go in and print the date that it came into storage, the date it went out, the weight, and where it was stored in the SIT control, in case of a DD619-1 in military. So you have the ability to control which pass or which time you insert the paper into the printer, how you want things to print. Now, I always start mine at pass 1, and only do I use a different pass if I have specific need for it. So pass 1, you can change it later if you need to. The type that I'm pulling from, you have quite a number of them available. The one most often used is the order header, and that is all of the information contained within order entry. You'll notice that you could pull information from the memos. Based on who the customer is that you assign the shipment to, you could actually go out and pull out even more details from a sub-file for the customer. You could pull more information from the CSR file that you assign to the shipment, or salesperson, such as their full name or other information. At this point, we're just going to work with order header. Go through then the order header. Then you got some other information to add. Now, this is just the way I do it. The field that I'm about to add is for the shipper. So I put in just a word here that tells me what this is. And as I tab forward then, you tell it the field number. This is just an ID number that responds or corresponds to the shipper's name. I happen to know I want that to pull from the field for the shipper's name. If you arrow down through here, you'll see a lot of fields. I happen to know that the shipper's name is field number 20. Do I have enough room for 30 characters of shipper's name to print in that field? And the only way that I would know that would be to look at that ruler and see whether or not it allows for a full 30 characters. And I don't believe it does. I believe it only allows for about 25. For anything that's pulled from order header, that's really all you're concerned with. So, and say I filled in this information, go ahead and add it to the form. And you'll notice that when you add it to the form, it's showing you're going to have 25 characters worth of display. It's about 14 lines down here on the page. And I want right now. I'm going to go in and add a new piece of detail. And this one is going to be on line 27, in position 9 on first pass. Going to be, and you can either tab down or come over. This is going to be from the order header. This is going to be, I believe, the order number. It's going to be pulled from, and I happen to know it off the top of my head, it happens to be 590. And type it, you see that it's pulling up that it's the order number. And I want it to allow it to print all 12 characters of that order number. So I'm going to add that to the form. Just as I use this band here on the right, it will move down the page all 66 lines if I need to do it. Another field that I was going to add, I decided to there at the very end. I'm going to add another record. Is line 18 and 9. This one is going to be pulled from the order header. The origin address or origin city, more specifically. You can go down through, and I want my origin city, but I know that I've only got about, I think I only have about 17 spaces to get city and state in there. Add that, so you see where it's now added that. Now later, once you've printed these, if you decide that you want to work with any of these fields, it's nice and easy to just go right to the field. See where I've just clicked on it and it's gone white around the field. It pulls up the field over here and it says, what do you want to do? Well, what if I move it up a line? Let's go right to the row, say move it up to 17. Watch what happens down here when I press tab. It's now moved it up a line. I know that's where I want it. And to save that. The element of designing the form, my suggestion, is to always measure it and mark it, get it ready to input, because then it makes the input very fast, and it makes the error on the input almost nil. What's really happening here, just based on what we've put in, out of the standard or entry header file, no special custom screens used yet at all. And this is that. I'm going to go back in then through the order entry system and go entry. Never used this before. This will be a great chance for you to see how to print a form directly from the order screen. I'm going to pull up a shipment here that I know at least has an origin city. One thing that I see that I did not add, and that was an order number, so bear with me just a minute, and I'm going to put in order number. Printing that on the form. All right. From here, I'm going to go into my miscellaneous screen and indicate that I want to print form 999. And Forward, I see that was a sample form, and I want to print it right now. We'll go into a sub-screen that says, okay, you're printing Form 999. Which pass are you interested in printing? And remember, I said pass 1 is probably the one you'll print almost all the time. What if you had a form where you said, I've got my form broken down into 2 segments. The first one is all of the header information. The second one is all of the ancillary information after it's been sent out and the shippers maybe signed it, but I still have some more information I want to fill in. Maybe it's packing materials. You could say, I want passes 1 and 2 so that I can print a brand new form that has absolutely everything on. You could say 1 and 2 just by putting 1, 2. The specific printer that you want it to go to, and I'm sending it back to the screen, and then I got to printing the form directly from this reference number up here. That's what I'm doing here. If I want to preview this with you then, without actually printing it to a piece of paper, I want to see what the output looks like. Keep in mind, we only pulled in 3 fields. We pulled in the shipper's name. That's in approximately line 14. If you were measuring this, that's about 1.5 inches. 6 lines per inch, that would be just a little over 2 inches down. I've got my origin city, order number. So you can see it's very quick, very efficient to get all of that ready. So again, your miscellaneous tab, come in here to print a form, 619. I'm going to tell it passes 1 and 2 just in case I've got things in there for pass 2. So that this particular form, this 19, it's still pulling some of the same basic information, but it's on slightly different line numbers. For instance, I'm showing the shipper's name. I'm showing Gaithersburg, Maryland, and Gaithersburg, Maryland as destination. Those are 2 fields side by side if you were looking at the form itself. Okay, that's basically setting up a form so that it will pull the information from order entry, but I have some custom things in here that I want to pull as well. This is a little bit different. So here, I'm going to go into my Forms Design again and my Forms Designer screen, up the form that I want to work with, add a new value. I want to print this on line number 14 over there by the shipper's name in field number 30. This one is going to be pulled not from any of these standard fields, but what's called an operator-defined field. That is going to be the load date. Let the screen that I've designed, that number, field within the screen that I want to pull, that output size is going to be 8. I know this is a date, so the input size is 6, the output size is 8. Add it. Okay, 14 and 30. Let's take this out to about 35. There we go. So we can see that here to the right of that, we have a date formatted field that's pulling here to the right. That on 15 at 35, I'm going to pull another operator-defined Social Security. Again, from that military screen, and the Social Security number, and it's 11 characters in length. And before I save it, if I say, you know what, I think that's actually on line 16 in edition number 9. I think it's printed right below the shipper's name. If I sing that value right here. And just that little bit of information, I'm going to go back into order entry, pull up the order that I was just working with, and act like I'm going to have to go a bit beyond that since I did give it an order number. What I'm doing to look up. And I believe I gave that a 99. It doesn't really matter which one it is. Wanting to actually, that's not the one at all. If you're wanting to pull up, okay, I'm going to go into the custom screens and know that this form is pulling information from the military details screen. Go ahead and fill in some information just so you can see the effect of what we've put in. Add a Social Security number. And if pickup that we formatted to pull in there. So I'm going to put that in and save it on this order. The miscellaneous screen on this order, I'm going to indicate that I want to print sample form 999 and right now. Since my sample form only has pass 1 on it, I didn't do anything with the pass 2. Let's go ahead and put this in as pass 1 and our form back to screen so we can look at it. You see a form where I'm pulling in that operator-defined special field that was put in on that secondary custom screen, as well as the Social Security number that was put in on the custom screen. Matter of, I didn't print an order numbers because I didn't put one on there. Now, just to say that got a lot of records in here that don't have order numbers on them that were in as prospects but not closed. Gives you an example of using the forms design system, creating the form itself by measuring the form, identifying the line on the form that your data is going to print on, as well as the vertical line spacing as it prints across the screen. We're going to start and stop. For the second part of this session, I'm going to focus on just designing the screen itself to contain that special information. I mentioned earlier the order entry screen I'd have the ability to change the layout or anything else of any of the fields that you see here, say through these top tabs until you get to this custom tab. Then you have complete control. So just in review again, I'm going to pull up the military details screen. Now this is a screen that I personally designed probably almost 20 years ago to allow the user to input the data that they would need to print on their various military forms. The idea was, well, let's put it in once in one specific place, and then we can use this data to print on an unlimited number of forms, not just military forms for that matter. It's also important to note that each of these fields that have been set up, custom fields, also a piece of data that is permanent in your system, so that if you have Report Writer or VanSvs Connect you're able to also access those pieces of data. So if I wanted to, say, do a listing of all military shipments that came in that were for 1,000 pounds or more, that were between the dates of January the 1st and December the 31st of 2012, I could go in and quickly pull that data in a query. So you're not just putting it in the screen so you can print it on a form. You're also putting it in the screen so it's lots of data that you can access later. What we want to focus on now is, how do I set up these custom screens in order to accumulate the data? The thing that I'm going to tell you is, ask yourself what you want the screen to look like and spend time designing it on a piece of paper before you ever go to the screen and commit to putting it down on the screen. It will save you immensely amount of time that you spend doing this, and it will really save on the errors. Go in and just set up a screen. And first, I'm actually going to pull it up in Screen Designer. I'm going to pull up one here that's already done so you can look at it. There, we'll go in and design our own, and you can see just how easy it is. Screen Designer, and I want to say, let me pull up the screen that's designed for military details. And notice that you've got a little tab here. You can set up to 9 tabs per scene in order to track information. In this case, I only have one. It's a general tab. If I were to look at one of my other three, I have a general storage and I have an SIT storage. So go to the specific tab of the screen or page that I'm working on within that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on my international one, I have even more. Ship vessel, pieces, weights, and cubes. Now notice that each field you have a piece of heading, and you've got your white box where the data is actually input. Notice that each field that's on the screen has a numeric value in it. That's what's called a sequence number. And really, the sequence in which the cursor would move through the screen if you were tabbing. In this case, I'm tabbing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can see where it's just moving through the screen very nicely. This down below, I'm getting into 20, 21, 22. So here my movement is left to right. If I suddenly decided that I wanted to insert something between the cursor moving between, say, 20, 21, I could create another field in here that would go from 20 to 20.1, 20.2, 20.3, literally insert 10 different fields to be accessed before I ever go over here to the 21. Then to keep in mind while you're designing it. Leave that screen military. Yeah, there's some oddities here. Notice, for instance, it goes 1, 2, 3. 3.5 was obviously inserted. 4. And it goes to 5 down here. Notice that the branch of service is number 3. If you said, I don't like the way that moves, I really want it to go to branch of service right after it's done doing the Social Security. Well, you change this to, you can just go to the field. You could actually change the sequence up here to 5. More than sequentially, the cursor moves through the screen. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and start setting up a screen from scratch. In case I don't have any screens that are set up, So what I'm going to do is let's see, what was the highest number? 900. Okay. I'm going to add a screen 999. You didn't have to click on add a new record or anything else. This particular screen is going to be called demo screen. Instead of it saying page 1, I want it to say general info. See, I'm typing it in. It's actually creating the tab right there. So I'm to save that. So now I have literally set up the header for a screen. Then I'm to start setting up the fields in the header. So I'm going to add a new field. First thing that you want to do, and again, if you'll design this on paper, it's much better than doing it like I am right here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to say on the screen, I want to add a header, a piece of information that just prints on the screen. It's operator defined. Not only is it operator defined, but it's going to be a label. Label is going to print on the screen on probably row 4, column 1, right over on the left-hand side. The caption is going to say going to add that. Done. It's added the word or the caption shipper. And by the way, if I highlight it, if I just click on it, it pulls up the details of the record so that I can change it. For instance, what if I wanted to move it over to the right a few columns? I could move it over to, say, column 5, and so that it instantaneously changes it on my screen. Do it 1, because that's really where I want everything lined up. And I save it. I'm going to add a new one. It's going to be pulled from the order header. I'm going to pull the shipper's name to print on row 4. Let's see, the word shipper takes about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll make it on 8. And this is going to be the shipper name. The help prompt is only a prompt that you would type in instructions to the user to help them when they're filling in the field. The shipper's name typically only going to be coming over from order entry. If you want to set it to display only what comes over from order entry, you can click on the display. But if you want to allow the user to actually change the shipper's name right here in this custom screen, not show it as display only. Saved this record yet or added it, so I'm going to go ahead and add it. Now you notice that I've got not quite enough room here between when the box shows up and the prompt itself. So I'm going to go over to the column, and I'm going to move that over to about 10. And it gives me a nice little bit of space there for that. And I'm going to save it. Now, when working with this, you really want to go ahead and on the paper, mark what the line number is that you have used. Keep track of what the line number is, because I don't have any way of saying, hey, take this blank page and make it a grid and let me see what line and column I'm in. I don't have that capability at this time. Done. Okay, I'm putting in my order header. It's the field shipper's name. I didn't get in there fast enough. This on row 4, and I want it in position, I believe we said 10. And only, no help. And Now, what I should have been doing is when I'm filling in the information and creating the new field, I don't want to go up and save. I actually want to add this field to the screen so it populates the screen, then to save it so that it's a permanent part of the record. Let's say that over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to add a prompt called order number. Let's add a new value, an operator defined field, where label on row 4. I'm going to take this up a ways. And this was 8 and 30. I'm going to take this up a ways, actually. Just like, I would say order number. I'm going to say add it to the screen. Okay, so it's a little far to the right, so I could come in here and while I'm doing it, just go ahead and say, you know what, smooth it over just a little bit to like maybe 42. It's not quite 40. Probably good enough. Now what I'm going to do is then add a new one. This is from the order header file. In this case, I'm pulling it from the order number, which I know is field 590. This is why it's good to put it on paper. You can identify all your fields before you get started. I'm wanting this one to begin in position or row 4 position. Gosh, what do I want? 66. And I can just type 66, or if I know what the field's going to be close to, I can just start typing it in. The order number into the screen. Yeah, it's a bit over far out to the side. So I'll back over maybe 2, and it's fine. Save. Message, what am I doing that I should not be doing? We can't get it. Unsuccessful form, possible permissions problem. So it's probably trying to add a value to a file, and it's problems. So that's a bad on my part. Still show you is that I have indeed added some values here. I'm going to go ahead now and, you know what, there's me. I'm going to change that over to about sequence 3.5. 1, 2, 3, 3.5. That's the problem. You have gotten your design taken care of, and you've gotten all of your fields input. Pull up another one here that's got quite a little bit of details on it. You can see that you'll end up with tabs across the top based on the content that you have below. Tabs then have details on the screen below. Each of those pieces of information is a caption or a description of the field so that you know what you're working with. Your sequences are the manner through which you would tab through the screen. And then it changes. Example, and pulled up the order itself. In matter. If I had an order number in it, go directly to the custom screen and go to my international details. That the shipper is dim. This means the shipper field was set up as view only. Don't let me get to it. The order number is the same way. The first one I can get to is the one that's in white. When you are setting up an operator-defined field, it's also important to say when you're is sitting in the field, what help do I want to offer them for the contents of the field? That information will display at the bottom. That information is what you type in when you are first setting opening up the form. So again, as I'm putting in the information and tabbing, see next field, and it's moving its way down. Bottom of the screen, as I'm moving through the tabs, you'll notice that it's saying like enter survey date 6 characters, such as 06, 01, 13, etc. If you've made your changes to the screen, then you just can save your changes to the and then you see that I'm in dim. So again, I just brought up another principle on this. When you're working through forms design and you're designing the screen itself, one of these internet. Let's say that I'm wanting to edit the information that I'm telling the user to input at the time they're in the field. So I'm going to click on this DC number. It says I want it to put the help caption, enter the DC number on this shipment. Notice it goes past the field, so I can keep typing until it stops. Enter the date requested. This says enter the date requested and is granted at origin, etc. So this allows you to be in control of the help or the instructions that are put in each of these operator-defined fields. Something else to keep in mind when you're designing it on your piece of paper, the way you're going to want to input it in the screen. This, after you have designed your forms and your screens, to go into the options and interfaces. This is kind of the last place you would go, and you do not have to use this. What it allows you to do is set up default scenes, moving and storage orders, as well as default van line order screens, as well as default forms to be used, whether when it's a moving and storage shipment or when it's a van line shipment. Instead, however, you might want to consider this. Instead of general, go in and say, if it's a type 1 shipment, which is an allied household good, I'm saying use screens 2, 3, and 5. You can even expand it and say use screen 855 for the containers, for instance. This allows you to say specific to the order type, additional screens would be eligible to be used to data specific to that order type. Likewise, you can say in forms, if you're printing local COD moves, I want to perhaps use a dispatch ticket, a job sheet, and maybe one of these sample forms. This just allows you to set those parameters based on the order type, and you're not required to print the jobs or the, should I say, the forms. Happen when you set them up this way, when you're in order entry and have added an order, and I'm adding an order, allied shipment. Andrea, my source might be a previous customer, order number, I don't know yet. Let's say that it's going to be packing on the 15th. The test shipper force. And that's all I really have to fill in on an order. That order then, if I went into the miscellaneous screen, I had set it up to say yes to auto add the forms, I would see those various forms listed here as forms to consider printing for its job type. And only those jobs or those forms that I decide I really do want to print, I would go and print them at the time or at a later time. Essentially, all it's doing is just telling you the types of forms that might need to be printed this particular order. Indeed, want those forms to show up. Form in forms design, and say a job sheet. You want the print flag to show up based on the way I've set the control file. Print flag is yes, meaning I want it to show up in the list of things to print. I can always ignore it if I want to. And at all of the forms I have set up, I have not set the flag to say